Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
As always, guys, check in daily. Make sure you subscribe with all three channels, Evolutionary, EEARTS, and also Heart Zone. We're going to go take a look first over great state of Texas. Texas bill's going to create, or would create, if it goes through, state-issued gold-backed digital currency. So bills introduced in the Texas House and Senate would create a state-issued gold-backed digital currency. It's still a digital currency is the main thing I would take from this. Enactment of this legislation would create an option for people to transact business in quote-unquote sound money, set the stage to undermine the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money and create a viable alternative to a central bank digital currency. So you have Senators Brian Hughes, Republican, introduced the Senate Bill 2334 on March 10th. Representative Mark D'Orazio introduced a companion House bill, HB 4903. On the same day, the legislation would require the state comptroller to establish a digital currency that's fully backed by gold and fully redeemable in cash or gold as well. The comptroller would be required to create a mechanism to use the gold-backed digital currency in everyday transactions. In establishing the digital currency, the comptroller shall establish a means to ensure that a person who holds the digital currency may readily transfer or assign the digital currency to any other person by electronic means. State of Texas would hold gold backing the currency in trust on behalf of the digital currency holders. The trustee shall maintain enough gold to provide for the redemption in gold of all units of the digital currency that have been issued and are not yet redeemed for money or gold. In practice, individuals would be able to purchase digital currency from the state. The state would then use the money to purchase gold that would be held in the Texas Bullion Depository or another secure vault. Individuals would be able to redeem their digital currency for dollars or gold. A gold-backed digital currency will create an alternative, allow individuals and businesses to avoid a CBDC. Well, I mean, that is a CBDC. Digital currencies exist as virtual banknotes or coins held in a digital wallet on your computer or smartphone. The difference between a central bank government digital currency and peer-to-peer electronic cash such as Bitcoin is that the value of the CBDC is backed and controlled by the government, just like traditional fiat currency. At the root of the move towards the CBDC is the war on cash, and elimination of cash creates the potential for the government to track and even control consumer spending. Nigeria is already trying to get people to accept its CBDC with great deal of resistance, and China, India, and the U.S. have all launched piloted programs to test them. Imagine if there were no cash. It would be impossible to hide even the smallest transaction from the government's eyes. Something as simple as your morning trip to Starbucks wouldn't be a secret from government officials. As Bloomberg put it in an article published when China launched the digital yuan program in 2020, digital currency offers China's authorities a great deal of control never possible with physical money. The government could even turn off an individual's ability to make purchases. Economist Thorsten Polle outlined the potential for big brother-like government control with the advent of digital euro in an article published by the Mises Wire. As he put it, the path to becoming a surveillance state regime will accelerate considerably. If and when a digital currency is issued, a gold-backed digital currency will create an alternative to CBDCs, but it's still a CBDC. Well, it's a digital currency, and it's just, do you put more faith in Texas government if you are a Texan? Which I think most Texans would have way more faith in their own state than in the U.S. government, and certainly in anything that would be directed by the UN or the WEF all these alphabet soups. Absolutely, Texans would prefer it to be just Texas. I do think that's the case with most Texans. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Speak up and share what you guys think. But again, the warning is, if you are looking to hold silver, or if you're able to hold gold, don't hold paper that says that you have gold, as in a gold certificate. Hold the gold. That's the thing that we've gotten from people that we feel understand the situation, and it's just kind of an obvious thing because, again, governments can and almost always do become corrupt to one degree or another. And so if you're trusting in others to maintain their integrity to the highest level, you're probably going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm looking at here is that they're simply changing the wrapping on the package a little bit, but it's still the same wrapping. It's still the same package. It's just the bow is a little bit different so that maybe people might accept it a little bit more. And the other thing I don't see, it's like I don't see any type of entity coming forward and trying to bring ease to anybody's minds, like, you're not going to be watched because XYZ. I don't see any give and take. It's all about, we're going to take control this way, or we're going to take control that way. It just, one way might sound a little bit better than the other way, but we're going to take control.
So again, your neighbor, just like, I had a neighbor that helped me move a washing machine. And, if you want to just say, hey, take this $20 bill, you didn't have to help me with that. You can't do that. You're going to be saying, oh, hey, let me, what's your address so I could send you a digital note? And then everything is an opportunity for the tax man. And that's the whole thing, because who is the tax man? The tax man is, ultimately, this is what they don't want you to know. And this is why our views are so suppressed. It all is the same entities. The Federal Reserve, as we've said so many times, and there's tons of people out there, just do a Google. Google, the Federal Reserve is not federal, because it's not. It's private banks. Yes, absolutely. And these private banks, again, they're corporations. And then look at who the big shareholders are, who's controlling things. Your tax money goes right to if you're looking at yesterday's video, it's funding the controllers, everything that we do. And this is just another way that, they're going to create alternatives that they can ultimately swoop in and control, or control outright, and you just won't know that they're controlling them.
Mm-hmm. And they thought of so many things, and we're all kind of in this position where, unless you are truly someone who's already completely off grid and you're able to create everything yourself and you're able to create all of your needs on your piece of land, we're all kind of in the same boat, because we're going to have to use the system to a degree. But one thing I'll always do is I'll always be on the path to self-sufficiency. So you want to be able to know where that food is coming from hand to mouth, because right now everything is going through about 20 different hands to your mouth, and God only knows. So I have my mom kind of in the back of my head, you don't know where their hands have been, wash your hands. Or wash that food, you touched money. So yeah, we need to really have the food coming from our hand to our own mouth, or really, really close, at least know where that stuff has been.
The illusion is that the governments are all individual and separate, that they don't really truly, work together, that they're in conflict more than, they're co-joined with a common purpose and goal. And yes, the conflicts are real. People really do lose their lives in conflict all the time. That's pretty damn obvious. People have been drafted, et cetera, et cetera. But there's always this unified purpose, and that's the thing that's hidden. the unified purpose is all about just basically utilizing humanity as slaves, bottom line. And now here you have Texas and you have Florida and many other states that have been set up to look like alternatives. And yes, and people have said too, haven't you heard, we were talking about Kennedy, and Kennedy's is running for president, Robert Jr. Didn't you hear that he was against a certain thing? Ouch. He's against the ouch. Yes, that's great. Of course. But again, you got to realize, people just don't seem to realize that there's all these different levels to this. And again, this is where we have to look into people's energies, look a little bit deeper, and understand also that they understand they're not going to be able to convince everybody to go along with this global system of governance. They understand that. And so they've got it all completely covered. Again, if the fine dining ware country ends up taking over us, the U.S. and NATO, okay, that alleviates the problem. And again, that has been ongoing, and we've talked about that dozens and dozens of times in so many different videos. That alleviates that whole problem of getting Americans to go along with things, because again, they wouldn't have any choice at the bottom, at the barrel, a gun barrel, obviously, as a conquered country. And there's other points to this as well. And yeah, there's always going to be those that are controlled opposition. Now, some will say that these people are truly fighting, and some have absolutely lost their lives in exposing or trying to expose. And yeah, there can be individuals that are within the controllers' core group that end up going up and against. We've shared with you when the Guidestone went down that there was actually behind that royalty. Royalty was actually behind that. But what was the actual goal? I mean, again, was it kind of infighting between these groups? But was there also perhaps a trigger that was issued? Okay, so does that mean that that's no longer a goal, or does that mean that what was written there, this is the beginning of the implementation of that goal?
Right. There's so many things that are going on that are out of our line of sight, and they like to do that. They like to tell us one story while they're living another, and that way, their control can remain safe. But yeah, I mean, that whole situation with those stones was just like a huge spell. It's like a huge spell, and it had something to do, and I'm aware that they all say the same thing in a different language, but there was something to do with the one that was broken in the direction it was pointing in. So that was all very, very curious, but ultimately in the end, it was a form of infighting, and it was a form of, I'm in control, and I'm going to try to steer this in a certain direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the bigger plan. So as we continue with the article, Gresham's law holds that bad money drives out good. For example, when the U.S. government replaced silver quarters and dimes with coins made of primarily less valuable copper, the cheap coins drove the silver out of circulation because people hoarded the more valuable silver coins and spent the less valuable copper money. Yeah, and I remember all that too, because there was still some in circulation when I was a kid, and my mom never had any money, but we used to definitely collect coins. It was one of those things that she enjoyed, and we collected the ones that were of value because you would naturally do that. Not that it ever amounted to anything. The key is in making it easier to use gold in everyday transactions. The reason bad money drives out good is that governments put up barriers to using sound money in every day-to-day life. Makes it more costly to spend gold and incentivizes hoarding. When you remove barriers, you level the playing field, allow gold and silver to compete head-to-head with Federal Reserve notes. On an even playing field, the gold beats fiat money every time. The U.S. Constitution states Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Currently, all debts and taxes in Kansas are either paid with Federal Reserve notes, dollars, which were authorized as legal tender by Congress, or coins issued by the U.S. Treasury, very few of which have gold or silver in them. The Federal Reserve destroys this constitutional monetary system by creating a monopoly based on its fiat currency without the backing of gold or silver. The central bank can easily create money out of thin air. This not only devalues your purchasing power over time, it also allows the federal government to borrow and spend far more than would be possible with a sound money system, hence the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. Without the Fed, the U.S. government wouldn't be able to maintain all its unconstitutional wars and programs. Federal Reserve is the engine that drives the most powerful government in the history of the world, at least that we know of, but that's all just going to simply shift to a new locale. Creating a gold-backed digital currency would take another step in the process of abolishing the Federal Reserve System by attacking it from the bottom up, pulling the rug out from under it by working to make its functions irrelevant at state and local levels, and setting the stage to undermine the Federal Reserve monopoly by introducing competition into the monetary system. Yeah, at the same time, though, what it's doing is still allowing people to track everybody, the government to track everybody. In this case, it would be, the Texas government. You're either tracked by the Texas government, which ultimately I'm sure the feds could tap into and track anything that Texas is tracking. And ultimately, when we talk about feds, again, we're talking really, we're not talking about governments. Governments truly work for these corporations and families that are behind the governments. Because it's, again, the system is corrupt. You actually have legalized, they call it lobbying, but it's legalized bribery. And this is legal. This is totally legal to sway politicians with money. Again, and people that have massive egos and massive goals and objectives when it comes to the physical plane of existence and hoarding energy, because ultimately, money is energy. You really can't trust people that have that type of mentality to do for the masses. They often just do for themselves. That's the bottom line here. So again, anything that leads to easier any state control, where a few people could control everything and turn off an individual's, ability to interact in any way they choose with their energy reserves. If we look at money as an energy reserve, anything that enables somebody else to say to you, no, you don't need to upgrade your kitchen. No, you don't need a new car. There's nothing wrong with that one. No, you really shouldn't go out to this restaurant. It's too expensive, or that particular meal. This is not the type of freedom that people truly desire and should have the ability to do. So in my mind, again, the whole thing with Bitcoin, the whole thing with any sort of digital currency is to get us ready, ultimately, to have our ability to make our choices, how we're going to use our energy, limited and controlled by others. That's the bottom line. So for me, I would always be against any sort of digital currency.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, the decision should be ours about how we are going to utilize our time, our effort, but it's just one big, huge lassoing of like Mike said, our energy. And there's always a way around everything, but it depends on how determined are you. I mean, how bad do you want your own freedom? That's what everything is going to rest on. It's up to your individual preference, and mine is to definitely have control over my own body and over my own mind, and be able to do things that benefit me without having to think of the consequences or of another entity, and what are they going to think, or am I going to get in trouble, for these thoughts, deeds, actions. I mean, we should all be responsible and kind the way we treat one another, but does it have to all be one big Facebook page where everybody can see everything, and that's as far as the controllers are concerned. That's what they want. They want to make sure they can see every little teeny tiny move, and that just bugs me. That feels so inhuman, and it feels so AI.
And I'll throw this out there too, because you could have regulations put into place where, and they're already doing this, obviously. It's going to make it so that you might not be allowed to spend your digital currency at a place that's not endorsed by the state or by the federal government, depending on which situation you're finding yourself in. And so, there's a local farmer, and his political views on things, and he likes to do things the old-fashioned way, and you want to go get some milk from him or some cheese from him or whatever it is from him, because he hasn't done certain things to that. If you understand what we're talking about, this, his products are as nature made. They're not modified in an unnatural way. There's no lab involved in his milk. There's no lab involved in his cheese. There's no science behind it trying to manipulate things in a certain way. And then they could turn you down saying, no. And this is the way they could put him totally out of business. No. Jones Farms is no good. They are not a state-sanctioned food provider. They are going against the state or the government, federal government's regulations. And then Jones Farm doesn't exist anymore. And then again, you're eating nanu. Remember Mork from Mork? Nanu. Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, as always, we want to thank you for your support over at Patreon and Ko-Fi. And this is one of the things they don't want you knowing the most, is how energy healing can remove things that, is just amazing, can bring balance to the body. And they suppress this more than just about anything. We couldn't do it without you guys. Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.